we're not the conspiracy theorists on this particular issue. It seems to me like, 19 amateurs with box cutters taking over 4 commercial airliners and hitting 75% of their targets. That feels like a conspiracy theory.
Sheen also made another shocking suggestion that we may not know the full story about the collapse of the World Trade Center.
I have a hard time believing that a fireball traveled down the elevator over 1,100 feet and still had the explosive energy to destroy the lobby like it was described. I said, hey, call me insane, but did it sort of look like those buildings came down in a controlled demolition?
Radio show, and you talked about 9/11, and you have is it a theory, or you just don't believe the government account of what happened on 9/11?
I just had questions.
Yeah?
I had a lot of questions. And the forum I chose to voice those questions in is the Alex Jones radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And just because he's a guy that I've been a fan of and followed for a lot of years. And, I got attacked. I mean, there were a lot of hit pieces. The reaction was
people get very mad when celebrities have opinions.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I know he's not qualified. He doesn't, he's just, who the hell is he to have an opinion about something so horrible. And, it was sad because they didn't really take a look at any of the stuff I was asking them to look at, any of the evidence or any of the stuff that generated those questions, And they said, oh, he's another tinfoil hat wearing Hollywood clown,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the only, I felt that the only real validation I needed was just being a tax-paying American that loves my country.
Yeah, and it's just something that you wonder about. And you would like to know more about it,
Sure.
I assume. And did you study the tapes?
I've done a lot of research, and it's not just me; it's the people that have come before me, the experts and the engineers and the physicists and the scientists and the scholars that raised a lot of these things. And I took a look at their research and said, yeah, it doesn't add up. A lot of it doesn't add up. Hence these questions, And there's 2 areas. There's Building 7, and there's the 5 frames from the Pentagon. Don't listen to me. Do your own research, But I think that, what happened to a time in this country when we were entitled, when we had a constitutional and a God-given right to be curious about things that didn't make sense.
The Command Control Center was in World Trade Center 7. Not in 1 or 2. It was in the building that mysteriously collapsed at 5:30 p.m.
Well, it shouldn't have been in any of them.
It was not in Tower 1 that got hit by a plane. It was not in Tower 2 got hit by a plane. It was in Tower 7 that got hit by nothing, 47 floors, and dropped at 5:30 into itself.
There was also internal fire in that building, which can melt steel, which was holding up that
No way,
building.
Elizabeth.
It can weaken it. I mean,
Well, that's
if you ask physicists alone, the force by nature, volcanic force alone, could have taken that building down. But that is an entire different discussion.
2,700 degrees melt steel. I do believe that it is the first time in history that fire has ever melted steel. I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved. World Trade Center 7. World Trader 1 and 2 got hit by planes. 7, miraculously, the first time in history, steel was melted by fire. It is physically impossible.
And who do you think is responsible for that?
I have no idea. But to say that we don't know that it imploded and it was an implosion and a demolition is beyond ignorant. Look at the films. Get a physics expert here from Yale, from Harvard. Pick the school. It defies reason.
The fact that the 9/11 investigation went from the moment the planes hit to the moment that the buildings fell, and nothing before and nothing after, I think makes that investigation completely illegitimate. If you're going to do a crime investigation, you have to find motive, you have to find, there has to be and we didn't follow that.
Yes, exactly.
It was quickly pushed away, obviously.
Sure, the evidence was removed from the crime scene.
There's no evidence, the biggest crime scene.
I'd like to ask you about one of your views or perspectives that's raised a lot of controversy. Obviously, your sense of or your reaction to what happened 9/11 and your questions that you have about the events of that terrible day.
Well, I have a lot of questions. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions. I think 85 or 90% of the people in this country say, what? I mean, a plane hit this building and it fell kind of like that. Another plane hit that building and it fell kind of like that. About the same time it fell. This one fell the same way. Looked like an implosion somewhere, And then all of a sudden the third building fell and no plane hit it. So naturally, I've got questions.
The Patriot Act and whatnot. And we just wondered, what your take was on it, and if you were dubious. Sure.
But I did not want to believe that my government could possibly be involved in such a thing.
Absolutely, I don't think any of us want to.
I couldn't live in a country that I thought could do that.
Exactly.
That would be the ultimate betrayal.
Sure.
Then, however, there's been so many revelations that now I have my doubts. And chief among them is the Building 7. How did they break that building so that it came down on the evening of the day?
Are you afraid that the Larry Silverstein statement to pull it and the way that it all came down? Absolutely.
How convenient.
Yes.
When did they rig that building?
Why? And then once you...
That's the most curious question, and I have not received a satisfactory answer. If somebody could give me an answer for how you rig that building and then bring it down on the day.
That is a curiosity, isn't it?
That's the one thing that I have not gotten a satisfactory answer from anyone.
And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Oh, come off it, Jesse.
No, not come off it. Wait a minute. Every war starts with a false flag operation.
You can't, in all seriousness, sit there and try and make out anybody.
Okay, let me ask you this, Piers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11 other than what the government's told you and what mainstream media has told you? I've been studying it 4 years.
I was editor of a national newspaper.
I've talked to
people.
Wait a minute.
In depth every day for 5-6 months.
Really?
So I know a lot about it. And one thing I do know is,
let me ask you this:
you cannot say that any member of the Bush administration knew it was going to happen and wanted it to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
Ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about your BBC. I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her. It didn't fall for another half hour, yet they were doing a pre-broadcast back to England.
Debris.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams. When I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747, or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right.
We went after Iraq. They did not knock down the World Trade Center, okay? It wasn't the Iraqis that knocked down the World Trade Center. We went after Iraq. We decimated the country. Iran's taken over. Okay. But it wasn't the Iraqis. You will find out who really knocked down the World Trade Center because they have papers in there that are very secret. You may find it's the Saudis, okay? But you will find out. But it wasn't Iraq.